Okay, so good afternoon to all of you students. Today, I'm going to discuss with you about the biodiversity, which is given most of the courses has been given by about the biodiversity, and in different ways they are given. But generally, the main thing that I want to discuss with you about the biodiversity. Well, separately, I will do about the India as a mega biodiversity nation. It has been explained in these notes, but not to that mark. So, I will be separately, I will try to do a separate video on India as a mega biodiversity nation. Uh, so, let's get started now. Okay. So, first of all, you have to understand about biodiversity. Those who don't know actually what is biodiversity. So, normally, biodiversity is an umbrella term for the huge variety of species of plants, animals, microorganisms, and includes the variety of ecosystems and ecological process thereof. So different forms of life that are existing on this earth and are interacting among themselves in a particular environment makes your biodiversity normally maintains the integrity of the ecosystem, because too much or too less biodiversity can cause impact and it can leads to extinction also, right? So biodiversity can be defined as a umbrella term. It is a big term. It means the huge variety of plants, huge variety of animals. There are different species of plants and animals, microorganisms, variety types of microorganisms exist, and the variety of ecosystems where they are interacting among themselves in different way, like they are benefiting from one another, the symbiotic relationship. Sometimes they one organism eat another organism for their survival, that leads to prey predator relationship. Then parasitism, where one organism is taking a lot of nutrients from the other organism and the other organism are not benefited from it. Then commensalism. In different ways, the life for different life forms are interacting among themselves and are living in this environment, that leads to biodiversity. So such diverse life forms are also the basis of nature's stability and proper functioning. So biodiversity actually leads to stabilize the nature, and also so that our ecosystem can properly function in that particular manner. Like for example, we know there are snakes, there are rats, there are mice, there are frogs. Okay, so we are not welcome to snakes. We get afraid of snakes because we know the cases. Snakes have poisons and they use them as their defense to, and as well as they use them uh, for catching their prey by using that poison. Now suppose if all the snakes got eliminated from the earth, then what will happen? Then automatically the lower food chain, or you can say the lower tropic level animals who were the food for the higher tropic level like snakes, their population is going to be large, and they will also affect the human population. They will also affect, in a huge way, they will affect the ecosystem. So we have to maintain that balance of the variety of organisms which are existing on this planet, and that's how biodiversity comes into play. Biodiversity normally can be said as the variety of species of plants, animals, microorganisms, and different types of ecosystems where they are living and they are interacting among themselves to become stable. Okay. Now there were some scientists known as Norse and McManus. They have first described that what is biodiversity. In 1980, they have defined biodiversity. According to them, biodiversity can be of two types. So, according to their experiments and their observations and their studies and the research, they have said that biodiversity is of two types. One is called genetic diversity, where all the genetic variations occurring in a species. Well, genetic diversity is related with the gene. Gene is the functional unit of life, where it is found within the nucleus of a cell. Now that contain the information to make up our body, to act for our body to become act in that way. Now we all know, those who are especially from the biology background, they have learned the techniques. Well, if you see that even in a same species, like suppose for example homo sapiens, humans, one human is different from the other human in many ways. Well, we are doing the same thing, we are digesting, we are doing reproduction, we are doing all the same thing, but if we extract the DNA from both of the humans, you will find that there is a huge difference between them, and that said to be as polymorphisms. Poly means many, morphisms. Polymorphisms. So even within the same species, there is a difference in their genetic makeup. There is difference in their DNA arrangement, right? Normally, the genes code for some proteins, and that proteins will actually involve in our what can I say, in our particular trait, in our particular character. So from that point of view, if I see in the genetic point of view, all are different from one another. That leads to genetic diversity. I am giving another example I have mentioned with the biotechnology students before. Well, you know the tulsi plant. Yes, you all know about the tulsi plant. Now there are various types of tulsi plant like ram tulsi, sham tulsi. You know, sham tulsi is reddish in color, dark reddish, and ram tulsi is of green, that we normally used in puja rituals, right? Now suppose same species of tulsi plant is growing, one on this area in this Indo-Gangetic plain, and another tulsi plant is growing somewhere else, suppose in the hilly region. Now you are asked to extract the DNA from these two tulsi plants, and you will be shocked that they are from the same species. Still they are to be shown that their DNA arrangement is a little bit different. Some percentage of DNA is different from one another. That leads to genetic diversity. We are all unique. Even you are unique from your parents also by few percent. By a few percent, you are different from your parents. In the same way, you will be different from your children for a few percentage. Now that leads to genetic diversity. It's because of the genetic makeup, the gene which codes for protein, that leads to our, for certain trait, for certain character, that gene is unique from one another. Although we are making the same protein, same growth hormone, same insulin, like that, they are all same, but the extra features, which are the extra genetic material which is stored within our body, okay, that leads to polymorphism, that leads to variations. So that's why in that sense they have said genetic diversity. You will see more in this feature when we go for the next page. Second is ecological diversity, where they have defined that various species are present in an ecosystem. Now, depending on ecosystem point of view, how many types of species are present. Okay. Now, there are two things known as species richness. Species richness, RICHNESS, and there is another term called species evenness. Species evenness. Species richness means how many variety of species are found within that ecosystem. But that means different types of birds, different types of animals are living. That is species richness. And species evenness means how many actually of the same species or of different species are living. Like for example, in a particular ecosystem, I am giving an example, it's not possible because one or two species make that does not make a ecosystem. Suppose in one ecosystem, you see there is a tiger, there is a lion, and there is deer. So three species are there. And in another ecosystem, like say ecosystem B, there is tiger, there is panther, there is leopard, there is cheetah, there is deer, there is zebra. So ecosystem B has more species richness compared to the ecosystem A that I have said now. That is called species richness. Species evenness means how many actually how many, what is the number of species living here, different types, not different types, what is the population of the species there. Okay, that is called species evenness. So these two terms has to be mentioned here. So ecological diversity means various species present in an ecosystem. So according to Norse and McManus in 1980, they have defined biodiversity in two ways. They have said genetic diversity, that all the species are different from one another due to their genetic makeup. That makes your species diversity. And second is ecological diversity, where various species present in an ecosystem, the species richness what we are talking about. Next it is saying the term biodiversity was first coined by Walter Rosen in 1985 in the National Research Council. So first initially actually the term biodiversity was introduced by Walter Rosen in 1985, and he has defined that in National Research Council. So biodiversity relates with different species of organism with the whole range of their biotypes and their interaction among themselves also, and also with the abiotic part of the environment. Abiotic part, you know, the air, water, soil, rocks, etc. Okay, so I hope you have understood in this page, the first page. There are 22 pages actually, we have to go one by one. Sorry, there are 23 pages, as you can see it is written here. Next is the concept of biodiversity. Well, here definition has been given about the biodiversity. The variation as observed among the organisms, in a habitat or in different ecosystem is known as biodiversity. So what do you mean by biodiversity? The variations as observed among the organisms in a habitat. So in a particular habitat, what variety of organisms we are observing. Okay, or in a particular ecosystem, what are the types of organisms we are studying, we are looking at. That is called as biodiversity in a simple way. Okay, then it is saying that then it is saying that in an ecosystem, the variations observed among the members of a species, variation can be observed among the member of the same species. Well, the genetic diversity, we are of the same species but we have different genetic makeup. Look at us, humans. We are the same humans which are living in India, and the same humans are living in the Africa, but they are of different phenotype. They have different features. And the same human beings are living in the Western countries like Latin America, or in your then you're in Europe, but we have variation due to our adaptation in that particular ecosystem. We have changed our genetic makeup in some sort of way, but we are producing the same proteins, same enzymes, same thing, that are all same, but the other features for our adaptation in that environment makes us to look different from one another due to change in our genetic makeup. So, in an ecosystem, variation can be observed among the member of the same species. Then, difference between the different species. Obviously, different species will be different from one another. A cat will be obviously different from a dog because they are not of the same family. They are coming from the different family. And in the coexisting organism of an habitat, coexisting organism, that means those organisms which are depending on one another. Like for example, the best example is the rhizobium microorganism, who is depending on the leguminous plant for their survival, and a leguminous plant is also depending on rhizobium for getting their nitrogen source. Okay, so the coexisting organism, they can be different from one another. They obviously they will be different from one another, and of a habitat, and even the difference between the ecosystem are considered as biodiversity. So there will be variation in the ecosystem level also. A pond ecosystem will be definitely will be different from a sea ecosystem, right? A terrestrial ecosystem will be completely different from a desert ecosystem, because different organisms are living in that different ecosystem, and they are adapting among themselves, okay, to suit their surroundings. So that can be also be defined as biodiversity. So again I am repeating, so in an ecosystem, the variations observed among the members of the species, the difference between the different species in the coexisting organisms of a habitat, and even the difference between the ecosystem are considered as biodiversity. Okay, now there are different dimensions of biodiversity. Biodiversity can be said at a molecular level. Molecular level means at the DNA level, tissue level, cell level. Biodiversity can also be defined in ecosystem level as well, which is a mass huge uh, level, you can say. So the dimensions of biodiversity of a habitat extend from the inner molecular features to unit organism to even population, community, ecosystem and biosphere. Well, I cannot mark the line because of small writings. So again I repeat, so the dimensions of biodiversity of a habitat extend from inner molecular feature. That means biodiversity can be it has various dimensions. We can relate biodiversity at the cell level, like cell of human beings, polymorphism, the DNA fingerprinting comes in that path. right? Forensic study comes in that path. How we can able to suspect criminals in the crime site? Well, we are all humans, but those who committed crime, their tissue samples are found in that crime site, and we try to extract the DNA from that tissue samples and compare with the suspected criminals. Now, obviously, the DNA samples, most of the regions of the DNA are unique from one another. Okay, the biotech students know very well VNTR, variable number of tandem repeats, which are some repeated sequence which are found in a particular DNA. Now, sequence are actually DNA is made up of four types of nucleotide, and they are arranged in different combinations like a puzzle. Adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine. They are in various combinations. They are present. Okay, and that four bases, what we call as nitrogenous bases, the adenine, guanine, thymine, cytosine, they are present at different combinations and make some repeated sequence in each and every individual. They are unique from one another. Even from your father you will get some percentage of difference in that repeated sequence. So by observing that sequence through the help of a technique called DNA fingerprinting, we can able to match the tissue that is found in the crime site and the suspected individual, and we and those who match 100%ly or more than 90%, 90%, then we uh, and then we try to convince them, and then we try to force them that they have done the crime. Actually, we can able to arrest that particular individual who have committed the crime. So so even at the molecular level, even at the cell level, we can able to define biodiversity. And to unit organism, well, organism is different from one another, we can see. To even population, well, at the population level also we can able to define biodiversity. We can able to define the unique features of one population from the other population of the same species. Okay, community, ecosystem, and biosphere. So biodiversity has various dimensions. Okay, you can relate biodiversity at the molecular level also. You can relate biodiversity at the high level, that is at the ecosystem level also, right? Now there is a conference going on at Rio de Janeiro under the title of biological diversity. The definition of the biodiversity was proposed finally. So there was a convention going on at Rio de Janeiro, and there they have stated that what should be the appropriate term of biodiversity, the appropriate definition of biodiversity. Now, according to them, they have defined that biodiversity represents the variation among the organisms with respect to species, with respect to community, with respect to ecosystem, as expressed in all type of ecosystem, either aquatic or terrestrial. So they have defined biodiversity in a easy way, and they have said that biodiversity represents the variations among the organism with respect to the species, with respect to the community, with respect to the ecosystem, as expressed in all type of ecosystem, either aquatic or terrestrial. Now there are different examples of biodiversity at different dimensions we can make and we can follow, right? So there are some points has been given, 5 points has been given, you can see here, and they have stated the different things about the biodiversity. The first thing that they have said, number one, the variation observed between the members of the species belonging to an ecosystem. Well, I have to make small. Okay. So now you can see. So the first variation, the first example of biodiversity, they have mentioned that the variation observed between the members of a species belonging to an ecosystem with respect to their morphology and structure. So first example of biodiversity is we can look the variation of between the members of a same species that are belonging to the same ecosystem with respect to their morphology, that means their features, okay, and their structure, that means their anatomy, their anatomical features. Second way we can define biodiversity in an example like different methods adapted by organism for their reproduction. The different ways through which organisms are adapting among themselves for their reproduction. Like mice. Mice is found here also, and you can find mice in the desert ecosystem also, but you will see a huge difference. You will see, though they are from the same family, but you will see a huge difference in their genetic makeup because they have adapt to suit their surroundings in that particular environment. Well, desert mice have some unique features, like a feature to preserve their water in their body so that it does not get evaporate due to the hot climate in the desert compared to in this terrestrial ecosystem mice. So second way through which we can cite an example on biodiversity is the different methods adapted by organisms for their reproduction, how they will reproduce, how they will adapt in that particular environment. Okay, then the third feature is related with the plants, the flowers of different colors in the garden. You can see different type of colors in the garden. Same rose plant, but some rose plants are white, some rose plants are blue, some rose plants are uh, normally generally normal pink color. Even if you see chili plant, some chili plant are small, some chili plant are huge, okay, some chili plant are blackish in color, some chili plants their fruits are green in color, normally what we usually eat, okay. So that's the another thing. So flowers of different colors in the garden, that also leads to what, that also leads to biodiversity among them. Fourth is various corals found in the coral island. Corals are, so actually they were used to be living organisms, but deposition of their skeleton structure in the marine environment, they get deposited in the corals. So the corals will also found to be varying in different island, in coral island. Different plants in the forest also makes that biodiversity, right? So if you look at particular surroundings even in your nearby in your homes, then you can see different organisms are existing in this particular place, and you will see that one place will be completely different from the other, although we have same animals, but their genetic makeup may be different. Then different animals can interact in that particular ecosystem as well. So these are the various levels of example of biodiversity. Now I am going to discuss about the types of biodiversity in different ways. Well, especially we have to discuss about the alpha, sorry, not this alpha, beta, and gamma biodiversity. We have to discuss these three actually. These are very important. Most of the questions comes from this part: what is alpha biodiversity, what is beta, what is gamma. And they do not actually nowadays they ask direct questions, but better they say to find out the difference between alpha biodiversity and gamma diversity, or they can may say, they may ask write the difference between alpha, beta, and gamma biodiversity. Well, it is a very easy part, but at the same time we will also discuss about the other forms of biodiversity which was actually proposed by Norse and McManus. Remember, in the previous page I have said the genetic biodiversity, the species biodiversity, and the ecosystem biodiversity. So let's get started now. Well, this is the picture. You can see that about the species richness and species evenness. Well, if you see the first picture, you can see here that only three types of species are surviving here in this particular ecosystem. One species is this, one species is this, the second number of species, and the third type of species is this. So you can see the three different types of species is found in this ecosystem, but the number of species is not too much, because the second species are huge in their population, so that is called species evenness. So this is called species evenness, whereas this is known as species richness. This one is the species richness. Those ecosystem which has more number of different species, that is called species richness. So let us see the second ecosystem. In the second ecosystem, we can see the species evenness as well as species richness is same. Like these species are having two population, these are also having two numbers, and these also having two numbers. So species evenness is same among these birds, and they are stably maintaining the ecosystem. Okay, species richness is also same compared to the first one. If you see the third ecosystem, where you can see the third ecosystem, you can see more different number of species are found. One, two, three. No, this is also not. I have thought that there is more species richness. No, there is only three. Three types of species are found. So here also species richness is three, and species evenness is also the same. Two population from elephant, two population from this bird, two population from this insect. Okay, but this is more species richness. Why? Because these are all unrelated species. Elephant is completely different from the bird, and is completely different from this insect, whereas the other two, what we have said, the other two features that we have mentioned here, they are of the same related species. That means they are of apes family, that is they are of birds. So stability will be maintained here also, stability will be maintained here also, because the species evenness is equal. Next is what can I say, next we will talk about the different levels of biodiversity. I hope you can able to see what is written here. So if we see the types of biodiversity, the dimensions of biodiversity, it may be classified at different angles. Like according to the structural property of the organism, biodiversity can be of three types: genetic diversity, species diversity, and ecosystem diversity. So there are three levels of biodiversity. If I see through the structural property of the organisms, there are three types of biodiversity: uh, genetic diversity biodiversity, ecosystem biodiversity, and species diversity. Okay, these are the dimensions of biodiversity, in what way we can relate the biodiversity. And on the other hand, we can also define biodiversity into alpha biodiversity, beta biodiversity, and gamma biodiversity, which will be discussed in the next page. So let us see about the genetic diversity, what it is written. I am zooming in. It is saying that every organism has the, about the genetic diversity, every organism has the genetic basis for their characteristic feature, and therefore the variations between the organisms or variations among the species are based on their genetic makeup of the entities, under consideration. Such variations in the genetic makeup is known as genetic diversity. So what does it want to say in the genetic diversity? That 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 see in this next line, it's very important. Variation among species, variation among species or variation among organism are based on, in what basis they are they are varied, on what basis they are different from one another, based on their genetic makeup. So based on the genetic makeup, based on their what types of in what combinations the DNA has been made within that organism of the entities under 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 consideration. Okay, makes your genetic diversity. So it simply means genetic diversity simply means the variation between organism or the variation among species based on the genetic makeup. That means variation among the organisms, variation among the species is purely based on what combinations of nucleotides make their DNA, make the gene. Okay, that makes them unique feature, that makes their trait, that makes their characteristics of the entities under consideration. That is called as such type of variation in genetic makeup known as genetic diversity. So genetic diversity is purely based on what what is the genetic makeup, or what type of genes or the DNA, what arrangement of DNA is inbuilt within your cell, within your nucleus, that code that stores that information for a particular character or characters. Like for example, I have said about the tulsi plant. Well, if you see from the human point of view also, we are all different from one another. See, you and your best friend, we are both humans, right? But still, if you analyze their DNA, if we extract the DNA from the cell sample, from the same cell, suppose from the skin cell, right? Suppose from the skin cell we are extracting from you and from your friend, okay, and we analyze them with the help of DNA fingerprinting. You will see some variations among you and your friend. The genetic makeup with you and the genetic makeup in your friend are bit different from you. Okay, so that difference, such variations in the genetic makeup between the same species and also from the different species makes your genetic diversity. Okay, that is the thing. Okay, best you can see the example. We are same human beings, but we are little bit different. If we go to China, we see different type of people, but they are all humans, by the way. Okay, if you go to Africa, you will see different type of people. Their traditions are different, their culture traditions are different. That's okay, because they are of their adaptation. Their genetic makeup have also changed, but they are making the same thing. They are making the same growth hormone, they are making the same testosterone, they are making the same, they are reproducing the same way. Okay, and all the things are same, but the other features that make your DNA, that was encoded in your DNA, is bit different from you. So variations in the genetic makeup between the organisms, variations in the genetic makeup between the members of the same species, members of the different species, makes your genetic diversity. I hope you have able to understood what I am trying to say. I have repeatedly said 3 times. Now let us see the next diversity, which is your species diversity. Just focus on species diversity. I am not marking it because it will not go continually. So species diversity in a particular area, the different species present come under species diversity. A simple thing, that in a particular area In a particular area, different species are present and they come under species diversity. So within a particular area, different types of species are present, and that makes your species diversity. So what is the number of species found within that particular area? More different type of species means more variety features, that makes species richness, that makes your species diversity. So species diversity is very easy to remember. In a particular area, different species present come under species diversity, right? Then it is saying, then it is saying that then it is saying that in any ecosystem, the types of inhabiting species, in any ecosystem, the types of inhabiting species together constitute community. Again I repeat, in any ecosystem, in any ecosystem, the types of inhabiting species together constitute community. So a particular ecosystem, we see different types of species, they are inhabiting in that area, they interacting with the area, that makes your community. Like in our community we have different religions people living, that's our community. But if you see in the ecological point of view, the community, different types of species are living in a particular area, that is the species diversity, and they are interacting among themselves, they are inhabiting, that makes your community. Through interactions, through interactions among the species, through interactions among the species, a stability is developed in ecosystem. So by interacting among the species, it's not like that they are not interacting with others, anyhow they are interacting among themselves. So through interacting among the species, the ecosystem makes stable. If we don't interact, ecosystem will get unstable, it may be preoccupied, it may be postly they will be occupied by the other invasive species. Understood? So so again I repeat, through the interaction, through interaction among the species, through interaction among the species, a stability is developed in the ecosystem. So by interaction among the species, ecosystem will become stable. Now what type of interaction, I have said repeatedly, I will give you the notes, that's the different types of interaction that normally species play different way, in different way the people, actually not people, the organisms interact among themselves in different way. Like I have said mutualism, right? I have said mutualism. Okay, wait for a minute, I will try to discuss with you the different type of species interactions. Okay, it is a different chapter, so I have to find another thing. Wait. Well, I'm not finding now. Let's see if I can find it out or not quickly. So I have found out the different ways of interaction that species made with one another. So I am zooming in to write that different types of interaction. So I am just going through this part. If you are confused with this part, the different ways of interaction that species do, different type of species do. Okay, I have to go for a blank page. Okay, I have found it. So the first way that species interact among themselves, different ways are there. Like there are some negative interaction, there are some positive species interaction. So about the negative species interaction. negative species interaction. There are many types and we will name them. I will name them here. So negative interaction are competition. Negative species interaction includes your com sorry competition, competition. Second is your parasitism, parasitism. Third way of negative interaction among the species is prey predator relationship. This is very easy, you know. Prey predator. There used to be a Hollywood film, you know, Predator. I think you know now, and you, if you see that, then you able to understand what I am trying to say. Predator relationship. And allelopathy, as there is another one, allelopathy, allelopathy, pathy. So there are four types of negative interaction, that is competition, parasitism, prey predator relationship, and allelopathy. Now why we are saying that these four things are negative interaction among the species? It's because that one of the, in this case one of the species will be harmed and one of the species will be gaining, will be benefited. That's why I am saying negative interaction among the species. Well, I am trying to discuss with an overview of one by one. If I say competition, competition can be defined as the active demand by two or more individuals of the same species or members of two or more species at the same trophic level for a common resource. I'm again repeating, then I will try to say in easy words. So competition means the active demand. What type of demand? Any resource. The active demand by two or more individuals of the same species or members of two or more species at the same trophic level. So when there is a resource, a common resource, and they are wanting by the same species or they are wanting by the individuals of the different species, they are wanting that same resource, that leads to competition. Okay, and the resource that normally competition occurs are either sunlight or food or water and shelter. Like best example of competition is, suppose lion and tiger. Lion and tiger are related with the same food habit, and suppose in that particular ecosystem there is a lion, tiger, and their food source is only deer. Their food source is only deer in that particular ecosystem. Automatically, if the resource get depleted, then there will be competition among the tiger and the lion to survive in that particular environment. Now this can also occur with the same species as well. This can also occur between the same species as well. That is, for example, two plants of the same species are growing nearby, so they will have a competition to absorb the minerals, to absorb the water, even sunlight from that same area. Okay, that is also of competition, because same species are involved in that particular thing to take that resource. Okay. Second thing is your parasitism. Parasitism, if I say parasitism, it is a relationship between the two living organisms of different species. Now, in parasitism, same species will not interfere in parasitism. So, it is a relationship between the two living organisms of different species, in which one organism, which is called parasite, it obtains its food directly from the host, or you can say directly from another living organism known as host. So one organism is benefited while the other species is not benefited, because their food resource is going to be depleted by that parasite, by the different organism who is living within that organism. Best example is your some insects are there, like lice. You know lice? Okay, you know lice, which normally found in our head sometimes. Okay, lice normally eat the blood. Okay, and when they when they get entered to our head, actually in the brain, outer surface of the brain, within the hair, they take their nourishment from the they take the nourishment, the blood, from the blood vessels that are in our brain actually. Okay, and we feel like itching, right? Okay, lice is there, then your other are there are some plant pathogens as well, like plant aphids, right? Then some worms are there, like ascaris lumbricoids, okay, which lives inside the body of another organism called as host, okay, and take their nourishment. Okay, normally parasites can be of two types: permanent parasites, which permanently live within the host body, and for their lifetime they take their nourishment. Some parasites are called as temporary parasites, where they take their nourishment for particular time, like during their breeding season, when they will reproduce actually. Okay, so the second thing I have able to discuss with you, I hope you have understood what I have said. The third type of species interaction, the negative species interaction, is prey predator relationship. It is the easiest way to define that. It is an interaction between the members of the two species, where one of the members will be captured and will be used as food by the other species, by killing them or eating up by the members of the other species. Now the other species will be of higher trophic level, obviously. Okay, now predators are those who is killing the prey, who is using the food, and that food is the prey. Prey, prey. Okay, like in case of frog and insect, frog is a predator and insect is a prey. If I compare between snake and frog, snake is a predator and frog is a prey. In another chain, if you see, um, compared to eagle and snake, eagle is a predator and snake is a prey. If you see in another point of view, peacock is the predator and snake is a prey. Okay. Now normally if you see the prey predator relationship, if all the predator will eat the prey, then the population of the prey will become low, and eventually the predator population will also become to decline. So to prevent this, normally the prey, to protect from the predators, most of the animals, insects of the lower trophic level, they use many things to protect from the predator, like they do camouflage. Camouflage. Camouflage is a process through which animals, insects, they are cryptically colored in such a way that the predator will cannot able to find them. Like some butterflies, their wings are black in color in such a way, in such a pattern that it looks like a bark of a tree, so that the other organisms, the organisms of the higher trophic level like lizard, like the frogs, will not able to recognize them. Okay. In some other way are there that they use some chemicals to protect from the predators. Okay, like they produce some alkaloids, they produce some bitter taste or some offensive smell, like some insects we see, they used to spray some offensive smell so that the predator cannot able to use them as food, as their defense, right? So this is the third way through which you can say the negative interaction between the organisms of the different species. Then the last way I have said about the allelopathy. About the allelopathy, well, allelopathy can be said as um, it is another way that through which that one species will be inhibited by the toxic secretion of the other species. So there will be a toxic secretion from the other species that will inhibit the other species to be to go away from that site. Okay, so I meant you can say allelopathy, it is a interaction where one organism inflicts harm to the other organism. One organism is harming to the other organism without any cost or benefit received by that act by the previous organism. Okay, like best example if I say of your allelopathy, uh, best example is uh, parthenium. Parthenium, you see, it is a weed. It is a weed, wild weed, which grows here and there in our gardens, in our lawns, right, in meadows, right, in fields. So parthenium normally they secrete a chemical called trans enamic acid. Transenamic acid, EINNAMIC. Transenamic acid they release, and that acid will inhibit the growth of uh, some inhabitant plants like Cassia tora, Vincaria. Okay, okay. So this is an best example. Then another example of your allelopathy is like the fungi called Penicillium. Penicillium notatum. You know the name. In your junior class you've seen that Penicillium notatum can produce a chemical called penicillin, which can be used as an antibiotic. Now the same antibiotic is used by the fungi to inhibit the growth of other bacteria like Staphylococcus naturally. And now nowadays we are using this penicillin to treat our bacterial infection of staphylococcus or from klebsiella, etc. Okay, so these are the four ways of interaction among the species in a negative impact. Now for the positive impact, the positive impact is what? Let us see. The positive interaction among the species, the positive interaction, the positive interaction the positive interaction among the species are commensalism, symbiosis, it is also called as mutualism, and protocooperation. I am writing the name. commensalism, COMMEN, commensalism, SALISM. Then symbiosis or mutualism, this you all know, where both of the organisms are benefited. And third one is protocooperation, protocooperation. Well, let us try to say one by one in detail, because you have to understood this part. So first let us see about symbiosis. This you all know, you know the examples also. So these three things are positive interaction among the species. So I am writing in short PIS, positive interaction among the species. Mutualism or symbiosis, it is a positive interspecific interaction. That means symbiosis occur between the members of different species, in which both the members are benefited. It's not like prey predator where one organism will be killed and other organism will be benefited, not like that. Both the organisms will be benefited for their growth and survival. Best example of your symbiosis, I have already said, the leguminous plant and rhizobium bacteria, where the rhizobium is getting their food from the leguminous plant roots, and in exchange the leguminous plant get their nitrogen source from the bacterium rhizobium, because rhizobium can fix the atmospheric nitrogen in the soil in the form of ammonia and ammonia related compounds. I hope you have understood. There is also other example also, like symbiotic relationship between algae, blue green algae and higher plant. Okay. Okay. The next example is commensalism. Commensalism, if I say commensalism is an association between the members of the two species in which one of the member is benefited while the other is not benefited and neither affected also. It will not harm them actually. That's why it is a positive type of interaction among the species. Best example is, if I see the remara fish, remara, R-E-M-A-R-A, remara fish living with the shark. You will see sometimes in your, if you see in this Discovery channel or in other channel or in internet source like from YouTube, you will see the shark is moving, and along with that small fish are also moving here and there with the shark. Now that fish is called remara fish. Normally remora, R-E-M-O-R-A, remora fish actually gets the leftover food from the shark. The shark is eating some prey, the shark is catching some prey and eating. The remaining food left over will be eaten by the remora fishes. Okay, and gets protection also from the other enemies also, because the other enemies cannot come close to the shark. Okay, and in this way the remora fish, which are the small fishes, they get their food and also they get protection from the other enemies, and in that process the shark is not affected, neither it is harmed nor it is affected. Okay. Then other examples are also there, like cow and small birds are normally they sit on their I don't know the name actually, sit on their back and eat lice and other insects in their skin without causing any harm effect to the cow. Okay. The last is protocooperation. Protocooperation is another positive interaction among the species where the two species are interacting one another in a beneficial way, just like symbiotic relationship. In protocooperation, both of the species are benefited in a huge way. Now, proto-cooperation can be said that it is a type of symbiosis, it is a type of mutualism, but it's not like that they have to get that thing for the survival. In symbiosis, the both organisms are benefited for their survival. But in protocooperation, the organisms are benefiting one another. Two species are benefiting one another, but it's not like that without that thing they will not survive. So protocooperation, it is a form of mutualism, it is a form of symbiosis where they do not depend on one another for their survival, but they are getting benefited. Okay. Okay, the best example is the Egyptian blover. Egyptian blover, blover. This normally it is a bird actually, and they sit on the back of the rhinoceros, back on the buffalo also sometimes. And what they do is they remove the insects normally which is found in the skin of the rhinoceros, and easily by removing these pests they get free from that pests, they get free from that insects. Okay, so in this way uh, your proto cooperation is being done. Okay, I am giving one only name, Egyptian blover. Then another example is that red billed oxpecker and impala insects of various animal shows proto-cooperation. So these are the various ways of what can I say, these are the various ways of um species interaction among the organisms. I hope you have understood this part. Well, I have said, because otherwise you can't able to understand that how species interact among themselves. That's why I have said these things. Now let us see about the other diversity called ecosystem diversity. Well, if I said ecosystem biodiversity, you see, it is saying that different types of living entities. See in this line, okay? See this line from this line, okay? Different types of living entities and various abiotic components together constitute the features of ecosystem. So different types of living things and the abiotic things, air, water, land, soil, they makes the ecosystem. As we know, when we study the ecosystem we have studied these things. Then see this line, as without organism an ecosystem is impossible. Without organism ecosystem cannot be formed, and the variations among the ecosystem are also important. So as without organism an ecosystem is impossible, without organism you cannot make an ecosystem, so the variation among ecosystem are also important. So the ecosystem are also of variety types, right? Because of this reason ecosystem, see this line, because of this reason ecosystem diversity also becomes an important criterion from the other for measuring biodiversity. So there are different types of ecosystem, and based on that different types of animals, living entities are living and interacting among themselves in different way, what we have discussed a little bit ago. In consideration, see this line, in consideration to communities in ecosystem, one ecosystem becomes different from the other ecosystem. So it is saying here, I'm making a mark here, it is saying here, in consideration to the communities in ecosystem, one ecosystem becomes different from the other. So in consideration to communities in ecosystem, one ecosystem becomes different from the other ecosystem depending on what type of communities are living and adapting in that environment. Obviously one ecosystem will be different from the other ecosystem. So different ecosystem represents the portrait of biodiversity. Okay, understood? I think you have understood. So it is saying, again I am repeating from the first, ecosystem diversity, different types of living organisms and various abiotic components together make your ecosystem, together makes the components of ecosystem. Now without organism, an ecosystem is impossible. Now there is a variation among the ecosystem where the organisms are adapting among themselves to live in that ecosystem. Because of this reason, ecosystem diversity also become important criteria for measuring the biodiversity. That is the main reason, that there are different types of ecosystems. So in that basis, we can also measure the biodiversity in ecosystem point of view. Now they have said that, relating to the communities, one ecosystem will be different from the other ecosystem. Now these different ecosystems represent the different portrait of biodiversity. Okay, I hope you have understood what I have tried to say. Okay. Okay, next what we will do is about the three things: alpha, beta and gamma diversity. Then I will end up this part. In the next class I will discuss about the other things of the biodiversity, like what are the cause of biodiversity loss, the importance of the biodiversity, how we can conserve the biodiversity, the in situ conservation and ex situ conservation of biodiversity. But today I will discuss up to here the alpha, beta and gamma diversity. Is very easy, don't get confused. Okay, let us see what is alpha diversity, what is beta diversity and what is gamma biodiversity. So alpha diversity, now this type of biodiversity normally is based on the ecosystem point of view. Okay, I am writing this diversity in the ecosystem point of view. Alpha diversity, the species diversity of a given community comprises alpha diversity. Again I repeat, the species diversity of a given community make your alpha diversity. So what is the different forms of species, that is the species richness and species evenness in that particular ecosystem makes your alpha diversity. It depends on species richness and species evenness. What I have said, this is written here. A lot of competition, interactions and other interactions are observed among the members of the same community. Obviously, if there is more species richness, there will be competition, there will be different forms of interaction, that I have said, positive interaction among the species as well as negative interaction among the species, to make the ecosystem stable, like commensalism, prey predator relationship, then mutualism, then amensalism, like protocol operation. Okay, different types of interaction will be observed among the members of the same species, members of the different species of the same community. So in picture, if I see diversity will be look like this one, alpha diversity. This one individual is a alpha diversity. This one individual is a alpha diversity. I hope you have understood. Okay, so within that particular ecosystem, suppose in this particular ecosystem, what is the species richness and species evenness, how they are interacting among themselves, that makes your alpha diversity. Now when you are comparing two ecosystems like this ecosystem with this ecosystem, okay, I'm marking with yellow one, this ecosystem with this ecosystem, then it makes your beta diversity is just comparing among the two habitat, or comparing between the two ecosystems makes your beta diversity. So alpha diversity simple means the species diversity of a given community makes your alpha diversity. That in a community, what is the different types of animals, what is the different types of plants, that means about a species richness and species evenness in that community, in a particular ecosystem, makes your alpha diversity. It depends on species richness and species evenness. A lot of competition and interactions are observed among the members of the same community. Next is beta diversity. Beta diversity is just to compare between the two ecosystems or two habitats. So beta diversity simply means it comprises different microhabitats, niches and variations in the environmental conditions, which leads to diversity at the community level. That means in a particular there are two ecosystems right nearby, and one ecosystem, their community is different little bit from the other community of different of another ecosystem. When we are comparing between the communities of different habitats or of different ecosystems, that makes your beta diversity. So beta diversity leads to diversity at community level. Therefore it can be termed as between community diversity. That means in that particular community, in that particular ecosystem, what is the number of species richness and evenness compared to the another ecosystem where there is another community, what is the species richness and evenness, and we compare between them. Then it is saying the less is the number of common species among the two communities, greater will be the beta diversity. So if there is less common organism or less common individuals of the same species in between the two communities, more will be the beta diversity. So beta diversity, if you see, suppose this is one ecosystem, this is another ecosystem, different communities are there, and we are comparing them between them. So if there is less number of common species present between these two ecosystem, beta diversity will be more. So there is a mathematical term given, beta diversity equals to S1 minus C plus S2 minus C. S1 is the number of species in the first community of an ecosystem. S2 is the number of species in the second community of a second ecosystem. So together it is written here S1 and S2 here as number of species in the two communities or number of species in the two different ecosystems, whereas C is the number of common species between the communities. Okay, number of common species between the two communities. Simply what we do, we normally see the species richness and species evenness between the two communities of the ecosystem. We sort out then what are the common species found within the ecosystem, and then we will subtract them, the common species, and that's how you get your beta diversity. Now the value of beta diversity will be more if there is less common species found among the different ecosystems. Obviously, if there is more common species, the value of the beta diversity will be less. The last is the gamma diversity is more easy. Gamma diversity is not for the two ecosystems, all the ecosystems in a particular area, and you are called comparing. You are comparing the all ecosystems. What are the number of common species? We subtract them. What are the different species found within that particular communities of the different ecosystems? That makes your gamma diversity. So gamma diversity is comparing among all the ecosystem. Okay, so gamma diversity is the diversity at the ecosystem level. Okay, it is the diversity at ecosystem level or of habitat level over a large geographical area. Like for example, the Silent Valley, right? Silent Valley is a site, ecosystem site, and then nearby to the Silent Valley or some little bit far off from the Western Ghat, there is another site, suppose. Okay, and we are comparing them. Okay, that is the beta diversity. Now if you see the all diversity in the Western Ghats, that includes your the Silent Valley, it includes the Nilgiri Hills, it includes all the things. When we are comparing the whole area, whole ecosystem of a particular geographical area, that represents your gamma diversity. Here gamma diversity is represented together with the alpha and the beta diversity. So it is saying that it is the total diversity that includes alpha and beta diversity. Gamma diversity can be written in this way: S1 plus S2 plus S3. That means number of communities in the first ecosystem, number of communities in the second ecosystem, number of communities in the third ecosystem. It may be more than that. There may be many ecosystems in a particular geographical area. Here I have written, for making it easy, I have said about 3 ecosystems are found in that particular area. So I have written the S1, S2 and S3, where S1, S2, S3 are the individual communities in 3 different ecosystems, minus C1, C2, C3. Well, C1, C2, C3, you know that these are the common species which are found in this all ecosystem. We have to subtract them, and then we have to find out the gamma diversity. So gamma diversity can be said in this way, like here in this picture you can see gamma diversity can be seen in whole geographical area. That is, I'm making it small so that you can able to understood. Okay, so the ecosystem here, the ecosystem here, the ecosystem here, and the ecosystem here. So 4 ecosystems are there in this particular geographical area. 4 ecosystems are found. We have to find out the species in this area, like S1. We have to find the species in this area, which is S2. We have to find the species in this area, which is S3, and this one S4. And then what we do, we sum up all these ecosystems, and at the same time we have to also find out what is the common species found in these all ecosystems, and we have to subtract them, and then you will get your gamma diversity. So alpha diversity simply means in a particular ecosystem what is the species richness and species evenness in a community. Beta diversity means comparing between the two communities in different ecosystem. Only two communities between different ecosystem makes your beta diversity. And gamma diversity means overall all the ecosystems which is found in a particular area. Okay, where and we have to subtract, we have to omit out the common species which are living in this area. That makes your gamma diversity. So I hope you have understood about this part. Okay. Okay, next we will do, in the next class we will do biodiversity in India. Okay, that is India as a mega biodiversity nation. Okay, then we will do some of the other things related with the biodiversity, the importance of the biodiversity, and what is the cause of extinction of biodiversity and how we can protect them by various ways that we will discuss. So that's all for today's lecture. Just go through it, and I hope you will understand what I have said through these 1.5 hours. Okay.